The RV Show USA is brought to you by Flagstaff, Rockwood, building better RVs, making smarter RVers.
Before we bring up our next guest, I want to invite y'all to that are catching the live stream or the recorded version, either one. Think about this. What would you like to hear discussed on the show? Think about your RV. Think about any gadgets or products, even some of the systems, in your RV that you would like to hear discussed, hear talked about. Post those things in the comments, whether it's about towing or safety or generators or solar or staying connected with Wi-Fi, satellite TV, surge protectors, whatever. What would you like to hear us talk about here on the show? And here's why. Our next guest has access to the smartest people in the RV industry. Whatever the topic is, she probably knows an expert in that category. So if there's a particular topic or a thing that you'd like to hear talked about, post it in the comments. We'll see what we can do. I promise you that. That said, let's bring up the founding sponsor of the RV Show USA, the queen of consignments, the president of PPL Motorhomes, Diana LeBlanc-Link, better known as RV Nana. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. I sure am glad you told them all that I know all these smart people. I'm not the smart one. I know how to get the answers to find it for them. That's it.
Well, that's what 4 decades of being in the RV industry, working for the same employer does, I guess.
It does. But I'm having fun with this semi-retirement thing. It's a lot of fun, and I'm seeing more RVers than I ever saw before. So that's neat. I love it.
That is neat. Hey, you don't mind if seriously, if people have ideas or things they want to hear talked about, that was okay for me to kind of pitch that, I hope.
Oh, please send me any of your thoughts. I love it when Alan plants seeds. He's kind of like a farmer. He'll go, well, what do you think about this? He has no clue what it is that he wants me to think about, but I figure out how to find it for him. That's it. And we do great.
Yes, you do. So if people have, if you're wanting to know about solar or connectivity or whatever it is, post it in the comments. I promise Diana knows somebody that's really smart. We'll try to get them on the show. So Diana, after a pretty mild start to the summer where it wasn't so hot, it got hot this last week, young lady.
Oh my gosh, I cannot believe how hot it's gotten all of a sudden. And I'm trying to remind people all the time, you need to go check on your RV. If you're not using it and it's sitting, especially out in the sunshine baking, that means it's probably 100 degrees, 110 degrees, 120 degrees in it. Go check and see what might have melted. A light fixture might have melted off the wall. You never know for sure. But
heck yeah. And and it's easy to get dehydrated. And literally, I mean that can be dangerous. Our friends Kent and Lisa Peterson. Kent suffered from dehydration recently. It was pretty serious. He's on the road to recovery now, but it's and they're up in Canada. You can have a heat stroke and not even know it's coming.
It doesn't even have to be our type temperature to do that. You just go out and you decide maybe it's 75, 80 degrees outside and you don't take any water with you and you decide you're going to go hike 5 miles and you get dehydrated. And it can happen at any time. And I have to say, this is going to be a little segue into a story I want to tell you that is something I always try to take life happenings, the things I hear about every week, and figure out how they will help those of you who are listening to the show. And we had a life happening recently this week that was scary as heck. I don't know if any of you know what a hoverboard is. Okay, I'm too uncoordinated to be on a hoverboard. We're going to say
it's like a little skateboard.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
Yeah, a little skateboard. Yeah,
right.
We see kids on them a lot.
We had a family member who had a horrible accident up in Washington and was riding one evening. Doesn't really know what happened, but the ambulance or some nice person found him in the middle of the night about 1:30 and no identification on him at all, which is where my story's going here. And he has maybe been hit by a car or lost his balance, whatever. A lot of broken bones, a lot of lacerations, and a lot of road rash. But fortunately, he's alive. But the bad thing is when they found him, they didn't know who he was. They took him to a hospital, but until he woke up at 7 a.m., which was 6 hours later, they didn't know who he was.
He was just one of those John Does, I guess, you see on TV.
Yeah.
I don't know. He could be a homeless person.
And his wife was panicked. Where is he? I mean, there's just so much about it. But the whole thing is, I know that when you're out RVing, you're at a strange campground. I don't mean strange. Alan, your campground's not strange.
We're strange, but the campground's not.
Unfamiliar territory. That's what it
Yes.
is. But when you're there, you decide you're going to go out for a walk. You're going to go ride your bicycle. You're going to go jog. I have a neighbor who jogs 10 miles a day. But a lot of times you don't think about taking your ID and have it in your pocket. And if something happens to you, nobody's going to know who you are, especially when you're millions of miles or hundreds of miles from home. So make it a point to have a copy of that ID laminated with you. A lot of people don't want to carry their cell phones when they're jogging. They just don't do it. They just go and they walk. But have that with you. Our neighbor was telling me he bought this handy gadget, and it's a little thing you tie on your shoelaces, and it has your name and your emergency contact, and it stays on the lace all the time. And those are silly. It may seem silly, but that could save somebody's life. It really could.
There's so many ways. I mean, just that story is so scary. It makes me think about up at our campground, and this happens all over the place. People, kids, especially kids on bikes, kids playing, and I'll ask, what side are y'all in? I don't know, over there. And now I'm thinking, what would happen if they cut themselves or broke a bone or something? They're crying. I don't know what site they're in. They're just somebody. And how do you find the it's a good idea. Whatever that thing is you put on your shoe, or, a name tag on them.
I'm going to find out what that is. I'm going to do some research, because I can see that so helpful. I go out, if I go walking through the neighborhood or I go ride my bicycle, I've got shorts and a t-shirt on. I don't have anything else with me. I will now, for sure. There's no doubt. But those are those things that we have to remember. And when you hear these stories, those are things you can share with me too, so we can share them with everybody. It's important that all of us are safe and we take care of each other.
Well, I'm glad that your story from Washington has a happy ending, but it could have gone the other way too. And
yes.
I mean, gosh, when you don't know, and that's just really scary. So I think it's a great idea. You've also said that it's important for RVers to have like an emergency contact list, and the refrigerator was the place to put that list. You want to talk about that and why?
Well, and this goes back to a story that happened at your campground, and you didn't know contact information on someone. And it is so important. RV Nana has, and we've got it on I think we have it on our website. If not, just email me and I will get it to you. It's an emergency contact list. I think it's so important that you have your name, your address, your wife or spouse's name and address, what you're allergic to, who an emergency contact would be. And if you happen to be traveling with your dog or your cat or whatever, what is that cat's name or that dog's name, especially the dogs that are kind of trained to, if you don't know their name, they aren't going to let you near their master.
Right.
And go ahead, have that right there. If an EMT has to come into your RV, it would be so much better that they have that information and they can do something with it. I've had people say, well, I've got it in my phone. Nobody else could get into my phone to find that. Nobody could get into Alan's phone or your phone. So that's real important.
And, somebody will say, well, how deep do I go? How much information do I put? And my response is more than none. Anything's better than nothing. So that's really good. And the refrigerator, I think, is just kind of the universal place to put that kind of info. Now, I know you've been reading your book, because I've been reading my book. Folks, this is a book by our friends Mark and Julie Bennett with RV Love, and they're going to be on, I think it's next week or maybe the week after. They're going to be on the show to talk about it. But Diana, you're always looking for things to talk about, and this book is like endless with things to talk about. What have you got in mind today?
Oh my gosh, I have had so much fun with this. And some of it is stuff that I've thought of and then they've enhanced. And that's what all RVers do. But you were talking earlier about the heat and how bad it is. And one of their hints on page 113 happens to be to make sure that you leave your cabinet doors open in the winter and in the summer. In the winter, it's going to keep it warm. If you've got the heat on, it's going to keep those cabinets warm. In the summer, you're going to stop that heat from building up in those cabinets, and you're going to save some of your perishable items that may be in there. Bread that sits in 90-degree weather turns green pretty darn fast. Yeah.
Penicillin, yes.
Yeah.
Prevent mold and mildew and in humid places. This book is amazing. I mean, it's most of it's simple stuff. You talked last week, Diana, about, and I thought there is no way, and how Fritos, Frito corn chips can be used as a fire starter, and it's true.
It is true. And if you don't have Fritos, Doritos do the same thing. I think it has something to do with the oil in them. I'm not sure, but
you think?
It works. That's all that matters.
Okay, Diana, you challenged me last week to come up with something positive to say about campers, right? Right?
Yes, I did.
Well, I don't have any. No, I'm just kidding. So I do have to say this, that one of the joys of owning a campground is being able to see people having a wonderful experience and connect with each other at our place. And so there's these people last weekend, and it was a family reunion. We have them all the time. We actually inherited this family when we bought the campground 8 years ago. Go outside, and there's about 15 or 20 of them outside in front of our cabin down on the waterfront. The youngest was about 7. The oldest was 92. And the 92-year-old was with his 90-year-old wife. They had been married 71 years. They were talking like we are. I mean, they were as sharp as could be. Diana, it was their 83rd consecutive family reunion.
Oh, my God.
It was so incredible, so amazing. And the children, God, they were great. They weren't interrupting. They were engaged, and everybody got along. And people, and the old man, the 92-year-old guy, was just so funny. And he told me stories about when they grew up he grew up in the area, 92 years old, and that they had an old Model A Ford that got stuck in town in front of the courthouse. This was before paved roads, and they had to have a team of horses to pull it out. And these, I don't know, just incredible stories. And I know that they're very simple, but that's so meaningful and significant for me. And that's one of the reasons I love owning a campground. People like that. So there's a positive story.
I love it. And that's what you get every time you go camping. If your guests earlier, they talked about they're outgoing. They're going to talk to people. You can have a lonely time camping if you never go outside and if you never talk to anybody. No matter what, you're probably going to be lonely. But there is so much fun you can have, and you'll meet such great families. And this whole thing of that same time next year, we'll see you there. That happens all the time. It's really good. So I think that's very important. By the way, Alan, you mentioned earlier the catalogs. Yes, we do have catalogs. And yes, go to the website and order them now. All righty?
Yeah, and they're free, everybody, until they're free until they're gone, until they don't have any more to send out. But hey, Diana, I do want to ask you about the used RV market. I am seeing a lot more, at least it seems like to me, maybe a figment of my imagination, but a lot more used RVs for sale right now than normal. Am I dreaming, or is there a lot out there?
There are quite a few out there right now, but a lot of us right now, we try to compare what happens this year to what happened last year. Last year was not normal. Last year wasn't normal for any of us in a lot of parts of our lives. But if you go back to 19, 18 different ones, the summertime, I call it the dog days of summer. A lot of people, and it's happened for years that I've been in this business, they'll buy a new RV, and they will buy, or a used RV, new RV. They'll buy it early in the year, right when the camping season hits. And then they just decide, instead of storing it for 4, 5, 6 months during the winter, they'll sell and they'll buy another one next year. And a lot of people, I talked to a wonderful couple today, and they were from McAllen. They had driven in because they weren't going to go anywhere other than PPL in Houston. They drove in to bring it, and they just decided that that big diesel isn't what they need anymore. They've been camping for the last 52 years, I think it is.
Wow.
And they were going to something different. And that's just a normal part of life. We all change things all the time, but the summertime does that because school's getting back. there's different things that are going to happen. They may not be able to use it as much at that time of the year. And a lot of people don't want to pay the storage.
Right, right. I want to ask you in about a minute. Now, let's kind of wrap this thing up. But if we have some buyers of used RVs out there, they want to buy a used RV, what are some things they need to keep in mind, consider when they're in the buying process? And specifically, I'm talking about the paperwork, liens or the title, that kind of thing that the bank may require. Are there any, I've heard horror stories about titles and serial numbers not matching and
unfortunately, whether you're buying an RV or a house or anything right now, there's a lot more I's to dot, T's to cross, because there has been more fraud. That's just part of our world. There's more people out there trying to get something for nothing. And you don't want to be a victim there. If you're trying to buy from an individual, maybe they have a lien. How are you going to be assured that that lien's going to get paid off and you're going to get a clear marketable title? That's where PPL, that's one of the ways my team shines, because our process is we deliver a clear marketable title to our buyers, and we have certified funds that go to our sellers. If you have a lien, we're going to sell your RV, but we're paying off that lien. And we have the fiduciary responsibility to deliver that title and that registration to that new buyer. So we're in the middle protecting both of you.
That is so important to mention. If folks, if you're selling your RV, get your paperwork in order. Go to your bank or your credit union. If you have a loan on it, find out what the payoff, get all that stuff lined up. And if you're going to buy one, just be careful. Be careful. I suggest you go. I don't know why anybody would buy or sell. Seriously, if you're going to deal with a used RV, do it on their own. Go to PPL. In fact, somebody just asked in the chat. I got a text message. No, you do not have to live in Texas to buy from PPL.
No, not at all. No, we register in all 50 states, and we sell RVs. We sell about 2,400 a year. We only sell used RVs, and we've been doing it since 1972. We've made mistakes along the way, but you know what happens when you make a mistake? You learn from it and you perfect it for later. And that's exactly what we do. Now, we do have a huge Dog Days of Summer. I don't know what the name of this sale is, but it's starting on Monday. Got about 450 RVs right now on our lots between Houston, Cleburne, and the the New Braunfels location. So go online, PPL Motorhomes, check us out, but come out and see us. I love it when I get to talk to you guys when you come in.
Yeah. Well, listen, let's leave it right there, and we'll pick it up again next time, all right?
All righty. I'll see y'all in a couple of weeks.
All right. Thank you, RV Nana. See you later. All right. You know what? That whole safety thing about having ID on us at all times, I think is a really good idea. It's kind of like they say about parachutes. It's better to have one and not need it than to need one and not have it.